Okay, everyone, welcome in to our medicine Buddha practice tonight, or whatever we're going to practice tonight. Who knows? Whatever happens, whatever comes out of my mouth is what we're practicing this week. But it's good to see everyone. I'm going to get started with practice pretty early today. But if you can, if you want to add prayer requests to the chat box, please do that. If there are questions, please add that to the question box or chat below the screen. I know maybe there were a couple of questions last week or some other questions over the past few weeks that I didn't quite get to. So if you remember those, please go ahead and post those again. So any prayer requests again. So if you're new, welcome. Please, say hello in the chat box, what lands you're practicing on. And this is a guided practice based upon the tradition of Medicine Buddha. So tonight, I'm going to continue a little more deeply with pranayama practice, which is breath practice, using the breath to work with different kinds of energies, both within the body, outside the body, the energy that composes all phenomenal reality. So doing a little bit more of that is really just an important part of healing, but I'll also offer as many alternatives to breath practice as possible, for those of us who aren't working with the breath right now. Okay, so once again, any prayer requests can go into the chat. Any questions can go into the ask a question section below. Okay. So, one thing that I just kind of want to relate as we begin right now is just really highlighting where we are as a collective, also where we are as individuals, of course, but just really acknowledging the level of, what's the right word? The level of, I want to say in general, the level of intense energy, but this intense energy can be grief, hopelessness, despair, trauma. And in our capacity really to metabolize this energy. When I say metabolize, I mean our capacity to name, to become aware of the energy and to decide on ways to work with the energy, to move the energy around. And this is one of the functions of pranayama work, breath work, right? But to acknowledge that, that is a serious, I would say, like crisis for many of us. Like we've reached our capacity to metabolize, right? And so when we reach our capacity, it's like we can't take on anymore. We can't care about everything. We call that also emotional fatigue or compassion fatigue. And that all is directly related to the ways in which, it's related to the ways in which the crisis has outpaced our self-care and collective care work. So the self-care and collective care isn't keeping up. with the reality, the level of energies that we're trying to metabolize. And that has a certain impacts, right? We begin to see that, um, really up close and personal for some of us. At least for me, I see it. It's just right in front of me. Every time I go out into the world, I just see so many signs of people just not being able to take on anymore. You know, um, and we're of course we're a part of this as well. We are also struggling, and I also noticed that for myself, the past, definitely really strongly the past week or so, where I have definitely hit these walls around the level of labor that I'm able to do for myself and for others, right? And I've had to really like figure out, you know, um, how to reinvest a little more and, creating, more support around self care. And of course, a lot of that, as I've said in different venues, has been um, understanding boundaries, saying no. Um, and the thing that's really frustrating for me is, and I know that like this is a response that people are unconsciously kind of falling into, but still I just experience a lot of frustration. And what I'm frustrated about, right, is the way that so many people are attempting, a lot of people, majority of people, I would say, at least around me, um, are trying to outrun or outpace the overwhelm. It's like if I can just speed up and do more and organize more and plan more, then I can stay ahead of the heaviness, the intensity, and the ways in which people expect me to keep pace with them. And it leads to these conversations where it's just like, no, I'm actually not going to do that because I'm exhausted, or I need to tend to my sadness and my grief instead of fucking planning an event for next year. Right? Or, hopping onto a program or doing a book reading or doing a podcast. It's like I'm not actually doing that. Like what I'm gonna do is rest. And I'm gonna do my practice, right? And you can do your planning as much as you feel like you need to, right? And that's just and and I get where people are coming from, uh, but the only way forward is to slow down. I mean, that's really um, the thing. And the thing about this whole illusion of slowing down or not slowing down is that there's still a lot of choices being made that people don't have to be making. It's work that people are picking up that they don't have to be doing. It's labor that it's not theirs to do, and they're still doing it. Um, and so it means that, okay, what does it mean? It means that you have to get clear about the consequences because there's always consequences, you know, for disrupting this narrative around productivity and efficiency. There's always going to be consequences for all of us, and can you hold those consequences? You know, can you say no and hold the retaliation of people calling you all kinds of stuff, calling you whatever. Everything's been, you know, said about me. You know, I have Facebook groups about me. About how full of shit I am. You know, I understand what Beyonce feels like now. You know? But anyhow, what are the choices you're making? I mean, that's really the point of this. What are the choices that we're making to care for ourselves? But really, ultimately, what are the choices that we're making to be free, to get free, right? Do I continue investing in business as usual, or do I disrupt that and choose something different? You know, and we say, well, if I don't do this thing, and people rely on me, and then people will be hurt. Sometimes people will need to be hurt. You know, you know. One of the things that has been really important for me, I've said this over and over again, is that I have gotten very clear at this point in my life and in my practice that not everyone's going to get saved. Like, not everyone is going to make it. You know, but it doesn't mean people are lost. It doesn't mean people are getting lost. It just means that, like, we may not, we may not do the very best conducive things to get free in this life. Like, we may not do everything we need to do to get free in this life, and that's fine because you get more lives. Without our consent. We get cycled from life to life until we're able to build agency to choose how to be reborn, and where to be reborn and all of that. But anyway, you know, so not everyone's gonna like be choosing freedom, and nor do I feel responsible for those choices any longer. And I can't take on, you know, people's choices to do something different. Or people's choices to stay bound within delusion. You know, and that is something that you grieve. And this is what I'm writing about in the new book, right? In New Saints, as well as like part of the grief of the new saint, which is like contemporary bodhisattva. So the part of the grief of the new saint is that they are having to realize that they're not going to save everyone. No matter how much you try, everyone's not going to get saved. You know, um, Jesus paid it all, but apparently I'm still paying something. So, um, and so, and I say all this to say, because I keep having these conversations. Also, I keep having to do this work for myself, where I'm just saying, you know what, why am I responding to the urgency around me by speeding up, and knowing that by speeding up, I am not making the best choices for myself and for others. I'm just habitually reacting to the urgency, right? So this is a question, from Shelley, right? Given that there are so many ways to get involved in the world, how do you find you make decisions? How do I make decisions? You know, and it's just this. I look at the people around me. I look at the communities that I'm a part of, and that's the first level of decision. Like, where do I belong? What am I a part of? And what is my responsibility in these relationships, in these communities? So that's my first decision making. Like, how do I help the people that I'm already with, right? And then how do I extend beyond my relationships, my communities, to begin to care for other communities, other situations, as well, knowing that at the same time, I am trying to practice sustainability, right? That the path of martyrdom isn't the path that I am called to engage in, nor is it a path that most people are called. to engage in. Martyrdom is one of the highest spiritual acts of compassion that we can ever engage in, and it's only beings who have a certain level of realization who can really move through martyrdom. So martyrdom isn't just saying I'm giving my life, my body for something. It's more than that. It's saying that not only am I going to give my life and body for this, and then on the other side of this decision, I'm not going to regret it. I'm not going to take it back. So before I make this decision, I know 101% that I will not regret this. You know, you won't regret it because you have realized the nature of your body, you realize the nature of reality, and you know what you're doing. You know, so the martyrdom is actually a surrendering back into the reality of things, the true nature of things. You know, true authentic martyrdom isn't me doing anything. You know, it's no I there. You know, it's the recognition that I am an expression of something greater, you know, and that this act is only done to inspire others, to help remind others that they too are expressions of something greater, instead of investing in this belief, this illusion that we're individuals. Well, this investing in this belief, yes, that yeah, we're individuals, but investing in this belief that we're separate. You know, that so much of the violence that we're experiencing comes from this belief that we're fundamentally separate and autonomous from all beings and all phenomena. You know, and of course, in fact, that is not the case. Right? So much of our struggle is just being outside of the natural state, you know, of the true state. You know, the tension, the suffering, the anger, the frustration, everything is a result of us not being at home, you know, being outside of our home, right? And I think what spiritual practice is helping us to do is it's helping us to return back home. It's helping us to figure out where that door is so that we can go through it and get back home. Mhm. Like you're either moving towards home or you're moving away from home, you know? And so when I think about how there won't be beings that make it, there are beings who are moving very far away from home. They're moving in the opposite direction, actually. And you may be passing these people, right? On the path, you're like, you know, you look over and you're like, why are they like doing that? Like, why are they creating that kind of whatever harm, tension, you know? Because they're moving in a different direction. Um, so, so Shelley, in terms of your question, right here, it's like I won't be able to do everything, you know, but I have to do something, you know, and a lot of people aren't doing even something, you know. But everything's interrelated as well. So one issue is actually a reflection of another issue, you know, and those issues are seen around us locally, right? And it's seen also expressed in our personal experience. You know, we see war in the world where there's war inside of me. There's tension inside of me. There's desire to harm inside of me. You know, so as you're working on disrupting war in the world, we have to also disrupt war in our interpersonal experience and our internal experience. If the internal experience isn't worked on, then we just recreate like these systems in the external world. And if I really want to disrupt the violence I see in the world, I need to get real serious about disrupting violence in my own experience by cultivating compassion and wisdom, or care and clarity. Mhm. Keep making decisions that move you home, right? And as I say all the time, it's like people are watching you, right? People will see decisions that you're making. And when you start moving towards home, people will be like, okay, what are they doing? Like, let's go follow them and see what they're doing, particularly people who love us, who care for us. They will see us making these decisions and will be inspired. I think that is the heart of the Bodhisattva tradition, is that what you're ultimately doing is showing people how to get free and then allowing them, to do what you're doing, to mimic you. In a way, we're just doing what the Buddha was doing. We're just mimicking what the Buddha did. You know, how do you know if you're moving to or from home? Well, do you feel free? Do you feel spacious? Do you feel open? Do you feel more loving? Do you feel more compassionate? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel connected? You know, do you feel inspired? Like, these are just signs. Like, you're moving home when you start feeling free. Like, when you are able to be in the world and the world isn't overwhelming you, you're moving home, because your home is really into the essence of phenomena. Like, you're moving into the space and the energy, and the emptiness. I know I'm not saying emptiness anymore, but you're moving home. And another sign too, which sounds contradictory, but another sign is that you will grieve more, but the grieving will not be overwhelming. Like, you'll grieve because you begin to see how stuck so many people and beings, not just people, but beings. You begin to see how stuck beings are. You know, like the grief. It's the grief of course, I'm just saying this shit for the first time ever. So I'm just like making up like names for stuff, but like it's the grief of of seeing people again moving in the opposite direction, right? Moving deeper into delusion, which is getting far away from home, opposed to people like you moving towards home, right? And as people move far away from home, they're at the same time moving deeper into suffering, deeper into violence, deeper into exclusion, we would say. So you have both the grief of seeing people falling deeper into violence, but you also have the space and openness and joy and happiness that comes from moving deeper into the freedom of home. And that freedom of home begins to hold the grief and the sadness that we have for others. That's called compassion. Compassion is remembering, experiencing what others are going through and still vowing to help them, but knowing that the only way you're going to help them is by continuing to move deeper into the sense of home. You know, this is a process, and many of us are not like. I do well. What's the best way to say this? I think that our capacity to help people in the way that like we dream of helping people only comes when we have really intensely dedicated ourselves to this path of freedom, right? And the spiritual talents to really help people begin to emerge with this dedication to freedom for ourselves, right? Like we have our role models, right? The people that we love and we study and we read, and we want to be like them, but like how did they get to be the people they were? And I will argue that a lot of them were already quite realized special beings to begin, and who had achieved that level of realization before this lifetime. So these beings are awakening to the labor of many past lives. So it wasn't just this random thing that emerged, that they began to do things that impacted for the for the better, right? Really positively impacted people's lives. They didn't just start doing that. That's something they had been doing for many lives. You know, and it's the same, for people who maybe create a lot of harm, like they've been doing that, you know, and of course, karma is rehearsal. So we karma means the expression of karma in life, and the body means that like we will do whatever we've rehearsed, whatever we've been rehearsing is what we're going to be doing really well in life. So if we've been rehearsing violence, we're going to be doing violence really well. If we've been rehearsing compassion, we're going to be doing compassion really well. This isn't random. Like you're just not born and you're like, and it's just this random thing that comes along where it's like, okay, I'm just going to do a lot of good work. No, you've been doing it. It's just coming back to something that's familiar and rehearsed. That's karma. Karma becomes this. I don't want to call it boundary, but it becomes like patterns that we just fall into, right? And this is why we're trying to create positive patterns, because positive patterning begins to spin and work out the impact of delusion, right? Opposed to like negative patterns, which actually churn deeper into delusion. This humanity question here is a really good question. I think part of it is, a lot of it is about love. you know, it's true love is wanting people to be happy, just wanting yourself to be happy. So it's making a choice to privilege love. And so when you're with someone and you're not happy, then is there love happening in that situation? But love, when we're talking about when we're centered in love in terms of working through relationships, you don't forget the humanity of people, but all you're saying is that like this relationship isn't conducive to limiting harm for myself and for others. Like it's just not. If we stay together, we create harm, right? And so you transition out of relationships because you want to reduce harm for yourself and for others. So you're not disposing, but you're saying that like this isn't conducive to my project to get free, this relationship. you know the point of practice is to love everyone. The point of practice isn't to like everyone. I think that's where many of you are confused. You're trying to like people. There are people I will never like. No matter how realized I get, I will not like them. you know? Um, but I work very hard to love as much as possible, even though this is a process, obviously. I want everyone to be safe and happy and free and everything. But it doesn't mean I want to hang out with people and be people's BFF. You know, I can call people a fucking asshole and still love them. I still want you to be free, but like I'm not gonna hang out with you. You're still a human. You're still one. Well, I'm sure someone thinks you're wonderful, um, and I get that. I understand it. Absolutely. And like I don't like you, so that both of those can happen. I love you and I don't like you, right? And not liking you doesn't mean that like I try to restrict your humanity. I'm trying to hurt you. I'm trying to like restrict resources. Just saying that like I do not feel good being around you. You know, so therefore I'm choosing not to be around you. There's so many people that we have to be around that we don't like. And why am I forcing myself to be around people that I don't like when I don't have to be around them? You know? So so it's a nuance that takes practice to get to. It's getting very clear that everyone deserves to be free. You know, but that doesn't mean that like I'm supposed to be everyone's best friend. These are all moving questions, and I said I was going to practice earlier today. How do we get free from struggle of violence and from past lives? How would one get free of struggle from this past life? Well, you start churning the other way, and there's gonna be a lot of resistance when we start making different choices, you know, and one of the choices that I think many of us may be out on the front lines of is that like there are people we see in the world creating a lot of harm for people. How do we actually begin to want them to be safe and free and happy, even though we may actually honestly hate them? That's where you begin, right? You begin by taking care of your hurt, the woundedness that you experience from the actions of whomever this person is, and you begin to see them as human. And when you begin to see someone as human, you begin to see them as being like you. Like if I get to be human, you get to be human, right? And like allowing that space to open and beginning to experience like the hurt. It's just hurt that we're afraid of, And it's like we hold on, like we don't want to forgive people because somehow we believe that like it will end up forgetting the harm that's happened, or like, but mostly what I see is that like we don't want to forgive people because we've begun self-identifying with the hurt. So to let go of the hurt means that we don't know who we are anymore, and we've built an identity around hating people, quite honestly. You know, a lot of these systems of violence is really about how we've developed a sense of self around excluding, and the labor that we invest in maintaining that exclusion, because our whole sense of self is wrapped up in maintaining that exclusion. Those boundaries of this is me, this is you. You know, if you cross the line, then I have to retaliate. So what does it mean to let go of that way in which we self-identified with that exclusion, which is violence, right? We've self-identified with that violence and saying this is who I am. And we've gotten so deep in it, like we just don't, like we think that if we let go of that violence, or if we let go of the hurts, it's the same thing. We let go of the hurt that we've experienced, then somehow we will no longer exist. I mean, that's how deep we are with all of this. You know, when in fact, it's just a really sophisticated way that the ego, the sense of self, uses self identification to solidify itself, you know. And then we start believing that I am the hurt. And if the hurt leaves, then I die, I go, I disappear, which is not the case. You know? So the compassion work, right, is so much a part of this. It's like naming, experiencing my discomfort, experiencing the discomfort, right? Beginning to reflect on how everyone else around me, including the person that maybe has hurt me, is also experiencing the same discomfort, right? Um, we begin to see that, like, you know, because of these karmic patterns that we've been swirling in, you know, a lot of us have lost this belief that we can choose something different. And there's compassion that can arise from that realization, that was empathy, really saying that, like, you know, these patterns of violence are really strong for you, and I am beginning to understand how hard it is to make a different choice, to do something different. You know, the easiest way to get there is to reflect on the ways in which we have been lost in our own patterns of violence and the work that it took. And sometimes that work has been the intervention of others, of community. You know, that people have intervened and disrupted our bullshit. You know, that interruption has been a mirror that has reflected back to us the ways in which the ways in which we've been out of control. You know, we've been out of control. Well, this question here, when you're getting mad at people who are close from home, anger directed at anything is never going to get you free. You know, um, directing emotions anywhere isn't going to get you free. What is going to get you free is understanding the nature of that emotion. That's the freedom. You know, it's easier. Well, you know, it's just me, but I think it's a little easier to get into the nature of compassion than it is to get into the nature of anger. Honestly, you know, but it's not to say that it's impossible to recognize the nature of anger, but it's hard. It's very difficult. Um, we can experience anger and frustration thinking about others who are making choices, you know, that are moving them far away from home, but that anger has to be held by love and care for them at the same time. And the problem is, for many of you, is that you haven't done enough reflection on the ways in which you've been out of control. You know, so many of us think that we've been born enlightened, you know, and And that's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to, and it's just when you're thinking you're better than other people, that's nothing but pity. Pity is just violence because it's hierarchy. Pity is taking myself higher than others and saying, oh, look at them, those poor people, you know, hurting people. Well, we've hurt people. We continue to hurt people. Yeah, their hurt is maybe on a different scale, but we're still hurting people. Like we have to stop. You you have to stop thinking that you're a completely different person than the people you're seeing who are creating harm. You're not. And it's quite frankly not a lot of like karmic conditioning between you and violent people, that people that you consider violence. It's not enough separation for you right now to be so like, what's the word, you know well, thinking you're so special. We're getting too self-righteous. This polarity is making us too self-righteous. It's like, well, look, they're wrong. They're. And I see it with everything. I see it with masking. I see it with vaccinations. I see it, with defunding the police. I see it with all kinds of stuff. This kind of polarity that says, well, they're wrong. I'm right. You have to let go of that. We have to disrupt that, no matter how hard it is. You know, you have to see that people are struggling to be well and struggling to make the best decisions, even though we don't consider the decisions that they're making to be good decisions. They're still making decisions thinking that this is going to be helpful. We have to understand that we have been there, and some of us are still there, thinking that we're making decisions that are good, when in fact these decisions actually aren't as good as we think they are. Like I say over and over again, it's like I'm not interested in being a good person. And too many of you are, you're so invested in being a good person. That's not serving us. Don't be a good person. Figure out how to practice goodness in the moment. And you can only do that through compassion and wisdom together, working simultaneously, second to second. Forget about trying to be a good person. Who gives a shit about what people think about you? You know. If you always want to play it safe, compassion and wisdom together is not gonna make, it's not gonna like create comfort and safety. It's gonna actually propel you out, of this whole like storyline that we call samsara. Is going to propel you out. When you're doing that, people are going to see you as dangerous, right? Because you're doing something that they still believe is wrong, because the system has conditioned all of us to believe that disrupting the system is wrong. It's bad. You know. So when you enter in abolitionism, we call it fugitivity. When you enter into fugitivity, like people will look at you, and start blaming you, because they're believing that you're intensifying suffering for everyone, but in fact you're actually breaking a conditioning, that people are buying into, that they've built a sense of self around, right? That's why I love like my in my 20s, like doing professional activism and just being on the streets and just doing actions and organizing and everything. Like the ways in which like the level of violence that we would experience from others when people would just come and start yelling at us. Like if we were just standing on the street corner holding a sign saying end war, and how that would trigger the fuck out of people, and they would come and just start screaming at you, what are you talking about ending the war? you know like, can you believe that? But that's the reality. you know, because you're so stuck in this conditioning that you can actually, like, will become an agent. That's a proponent of these violent acts. Not these violent acts of defending oneself, right? But being an aggressor. You know, and that's the kind of intensity that some of us don't have the courage for. And it's like, and again, I just think that like we have to work with what we have and knowing that like we're on this continuum moving somewhere else. And this is where we're at right now. And just to acknowledge that this is where I'm at right now. This is what I'm struggling with, and it's fear that I'm struggling with. Okay, just keep practicing with it. You know, to really cut through the intensity of delusion, which I call samsara. I call also in the new book the carceral states. Like to cut through this delusion means that you have to get fucking brave. You know? And at this point in my life, I have at multiple times made decisions that I was okay holding the consequences of. And those consequences were death, right? I'm going to make a decision to do something, I may die. I'm making this decision because this is how I understand freedom. So I may die. Some decisions meant that like I risked relationships with everyone that I loved. Some decisions meant that I gave up everything that I owned, including my name. You know, and we've talked about this in the past already. Like, what are you willing to give up? Right? What consequences are you willing to hold? What can you navigate to get free? It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry and all of that. But you just have to know the nature of everything. You have to know that anger is coming from hurt, and the hurt just doesn't disappear. Right? We have to take care of the hurt. We take care of the hurt, then the truth of everything begins to awaken. And the truth is that like everyone's hurting. Even the people who are making decisions that we disagree with, even they're hurting. Even everything like that's going on in Texas with like well, it's Texas and Florida now, but Texas with the trans young people, the trans youth, and for those of you who've been following this, right, signing into law, taking away these vital resources around gender affirming therapies and services for young people, right, and what do you call it, and making it illegal, I guess. Um, Even the people who are at the forefront of this level of violence, they too are hurting. This doesn't mean I'm trying to create sympathy for anyone. I'm not trying, this is what this is always confused as. It's like, well, you just want me to be, you want me to sympathize with the violent agent. It's not just about the violent agent, it's about you and your capacity to love and to disrupt violence. Like you think it's one or the other. It's like, well, I can only disrupt the violence that's happening systematically if I just hate things, right? And if I just love, then I'm just going to become inactive. That's not the truth. True, authentic love means that you are led to disrupt violence and harm where it needs to be disrupted. Even, like you can love someone, want them to be free and happy, and tell them the truth at the same time that this is the impact of your decisions, right? And this is what I'm going to choose to do to disrupt that, be it, activism, advocacy, or legal, whatever. The problem is love it's too passive. Like you want love to feel good. Love doesn't feel good. like Love is about continuous discomfort, but it's also about being held in the space. Like the spaciousness is the key. This is what we're working towards, just the space to hold everything. I can experience discomfort and I can also expand into the space around the discomfort. Also realizing that the discomfort is just an expression of the space at the same time. When all this starts coming together, you can be in the world in a way that's really brave and fearless because the space is taking care of you, right? And the space in these traditions is what is personified as the mother, right? The mother, be it Prajaparamita, Tara, Kali, Durga, Oshun, you know, whomever it may be, Ostara, whatever tradition you're coming out of, right? Like it is the mother as space that holds us as we do this really intense work of getting free and getting other people free, right? I don't want to like lecture you and like do all this stuff, but um, like I don't have any easy answers for anyone except for work, right? Like I can't. There's like this doesn't like shit just doesn't happen. Like it's never happened for me, you know. Like it's work, right? It's labor, it's brokenheartedness, it's sorrow, it's for me, the past couple of days it's just like kind of like just laying out on the couch and saying, you know what, like like the heaviness, right? And that's how I take care of everything. It's like I have to allow the heaviness to be there. And I do want to give up sometimes. I do. I just want to say, fuck it. Fuck it. I don't want to teach anymore. I don't want to you know, um, I can go do something else. You know, and that's a natural part of all of this. If you don't get fucking fed up at some point, I don't think you're doing this right. Listen, Jesus got fed up and started throwing shit around at the temple. Right? Like I can't remember if the Buddha did that or any other spiritual figure, but you know, um, and then you come back. Then you just come back. You come back. You take care of yourself, and you come back. You know, and so much of this is endurance. Like it's just like I just have to I have to sit through this. Of course, we have all these great practices, so many amazing practices, right? But I use those practices and I have to sit through it. I have to sit through the sorrow, the heaviness, the brokenheartedness, the anger, and the rage. You know, I just want all these lawmakers in Texas creating this violence for young people just to disappear, right? And I know that's a dangerous line of reasoning, right? But you let yourself go there, you know, and then you come back. As we talked about extremism, like you have to, like there's a way that we start skillfully relating to extremes in order to figure out what the middle is. You know, but it's not how the world works. It's not how the reality here works, right? It's like things just don't disappear. Things enter into a process of change, right? And that change is based upon my personal labor of clarifying my mind and heart, right? Okay, this has all been really wonderful. Meaningful relationships don't have to feel good all the time. Parenting, marriage, caregiving. Are you conflating easy with meaningful? No. Um, Nor am I conflating hard work with meaningful as well, you know. But the point here of relationships, am I creating harm because I feel obligated to be here? That's the point, you know. And to know that, like, sometimes we're choosing the hard shit because that's all we know how to choose as well. You know? Again, it's like you have to go deeper into this because nothing here is black and white. Right? And so the question is like, this is really fucking hard. Do I have to do this? And what is the meaning of this? And what is the impact? Mhm. There are really easy things that are really great and meaningful. There are really hard things that are really great and meaningful. There are really easy things that, like, I have no meaning, right? There are really hard things that, like, also have no meaning, you know. You have to figure that out for yourself. And I would say that sometimes we continue to choose this really hard, intensive labor because we actually don't know what we want or need. So we displace our needs with other people's needs or with the needs of the collective sometimes, right? Sometimes we enter into like really tough relationships because we absolutely actually don't know what we need. So that's the work, right? You know, people come to me, you know, they're just struggling with different kinds of relationships, you know, just romantic relationships, relationships with parents, and so forth. I had, and after I say this, um, I'm definitely going to do practice. um, I think I already told the story. I don't remember where I told the stories. I want to keep this very vague. Um, I don't know who I'm protecting, but anyway, I knew this really, I would say, quite accomplished spiritual teacher years ago. Um, Someone I admired and had done incredible, who was a teacher, right, and had done incredible spiritual work. And I knew this person's parents. I had met this person. So this person was older. This is an older person who had older parents, so they were older than me. I had met their parents and generally liked their parents quite a bit. Um, and After a number of years, you know, I found myself back in relationship with this teacher after, you know, this absence. And just casually asked this teacher, I just said, "Oh, like, how are your parents doing? I remember being very fond of your parents." And this person goes, "Oh, I don't talk to my parents anymore." And I was like, "What now? What's going on?" And they just they really didn't have to do this. You know, it wasn't really my business, but they just kind of explained that like the level of trauma and abuse that they had experienced from their parents that they couldn't actually hold anymore in their practice, and that their parents weren't doing anything to meet them halfway in the healing work that they were trying to do for themselves. And they realized that the most compassionate thing was to stop communicating in this life, you know. And I had never heard that before, especially from someone with that deep spiritual practice. And they were also, they didn't have to do this, but they gave me examples of the abuse and trauma that they endured growing up and continued to endure in their adult relationship with their parents. And they just said, like, this is the most compassionate thing that I can figure out how to do, because if I don't do this, then it's going to get a lot worse. It's going to be harming happening. And I took that to mean, they didn't say this, I took that to mean that they were being pushed towards self-harm because they couldn't maintain the intensity. They couldn't hold the intensity in the relationship. Too much had happened and too much was still happening for them to be in a relationship with them, you know. And that's it. That's an example, you know. We have to get to this point of saying, you know what, why am I doing this? You know, because it looks like someone isn't going to survive this. And when it gets to that point, you have to refrain. You have to walk away. Now, I have stories of people that I know who had to walk away from their kids as well because of the same thing. You know, so the whole thing with boundaries, this isn't this isn't this doesn't contradict anything I've said, because I have said over and over, boundaries are also about me and about what I need, right? And I don't feel called when I feel as if I'm moving, when I feel like as if I'm being out of control, you know, like when I feel like I'm out of control, I have to set boundaries if I can, right? Because sometimes we're out of control, we just don't know what's happening, and other people have to come and intervene. But like you're like, again, like so many of you don't know what you need. You don't know how to take care of yourself, and so we allow ourselves to stay in relationships that are actually quite harming for us. Right? The hardest thing for some of you to ever ask yourself is, what do I need? Some of you think it sounds like betrayal, it sounds cruel to actually ask yourself, what do I need? Right? Can I actually hold this harm and call it love? Holding, open yourself to harm because you love someone isn't love. The thing also that I've understood too is that like I can do everything in my power to help people, but at the end of the day, people have to do their own labor to get free. Like we all have to do labor with the support of the collective, but we all have to do something. We have to do something. I wish, and I think this is part of the Bodhisattva mentality, is that like we wish that just suffering would just disappear. Like I wish that. I wish that like no one would have to, you know, survive wars and abuse and famine and sickness and systems of violence and all the stuff that we're struggling with. Like I wish that no one had to do that, right? And that wish can really propel us into doing really amazing things in our practice and to do really amazing things to help people. But ultimately, that's not going to get people free unless people themselves take the initiative to do labor, to begin to understand and watch their own mind, to take care of their own brokenheartedness, right? To make different choices to de-escalate violence and harm. And they may not have the capacity and the resources to do it in this life. Therefore, we're praying and working that they're able to be reborn in a situation where they get the resources that they need to get clear about their own awakened nature. You have to think about this in the long term, not just this life. But I know some of you, like, and I get that, like, this is kind of like this kind of part of Buddhism that people struggle to reconcile. So I get that, but like in the depth of Buddhist philosophy, we understand that like this is a multi-lifetime project. When I say multi-lifetime, what I mean to say is that it's a countless lifetime. Like you have lost count of the lifetimes that you've been doing this, but it doesn't matter because time doesn't exist to begin with. So what does countless mean? What does countless mean? An illusion that we're just cycling through. It's not happening to begin with, right? And when you start really like paying attention to what you need and start gathering the resources that you really need, you will be called selfish. You will be called all kinds of names. When I decided to do 3-year retreat, my God, it was just like I was the most selfish person that ever visited in the world. Like I just didn't get it. I was explicit and clear. I was transparent. And I said, I can't survive this life if I don't do this. And don't you want me to survive? And the feedback was always like, well, what about us? And I got to a point and I said, well, fuck you. That's like, fuck you. Like you have not communicated your desire for me to survive. And therefore I'm making a choice to actually, to go into retreat, which was actually a boundary that people couldn't cross. When people make it explicit that they aren't interested in me surviving, but are much more interested in using me for their survival, then that's going to end up with a hard fuck you. I mean, that's how serious I am about this. You should know that. You should really get this about me. You will not survive submitting to people who aren't interested in your welfare, your benefit, your survival, your sustainability. And if I actually love myself, then I actually want to be sustainable. So what love looks like is saying no. I want you to survive. The only reason I'm here tonight doing this, Medicine Buddha, which we've been doing for 2 years now, since the beginning of the pandemic. This is our 2-year anniversary. I guess it was, we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary, maybe next week or maybe the end of April. But we've been doing this every Monday night for 2 years. Not because I experience feeling resourced from this. I don't get anything from this, actually, quite honestly. I do this because I want you to survive. I just want you to survive, you know? Right? It's like you have to have people who want you to survive. Like you need at least one person. Like you need people, even the worst fucking people in the world. I have a list of people like this. I just have to look at the news. Like even the list of the people who I think are like, oh my God, why are they alive right now? Like even they need people. And to thriving, right? And then there's the joy in all of this. I know this is hard to hear and to listen to. You have to understand that I had to go through this too. I had to have teachers who were just like, Rod, what the fuck are you thinking? Get like, what are you? I've had teachers who were just like, you have to make a different choice. You have to stop thinking in these ways because you're not going to make it. You're not going to. This is not compassionate. It's not love. The way that you're thinking isn't going to help anyone. It's not even helping yourself. And I just had to sit through these really hard experiences where over and over again, it was like being asked, what do you need? Because you're not getting what you need. Because you're not getting what you need, you're making choices that creates harm for people, including yourself. It's the depletion. It's the depletion, right? The depletion. We start reacting to the depletion of not having our basic resources, right? And then we just start doing things that create harm. Like people who create so much violence are depleted. They're lacking something, right? Something that they really need that they didn't get and don't get. If I want to be the least violent version of myself, I have to make sure that I'm getting my needs met in a way that's ethical, and sustainable and consensual, like all of that. Mhm. I know some of you, this is your first time being here tonight, and I apologize. This is a conversation that's been going on for 2 years. I know how it is walking to something that's already been going, and you're like, this is how I started my practice, really. Just walking into the door, and I was like, what the fuck is everyone talking about? Buddha nature and and karma and awakening. I don't get any of this. You have to start somewhere. You know? But this is a great place for practice to emerge, right? And so let's begin with with gratitude. There's a question about gratitude here, so let's look at it. I mean, well, we're gonna look at it in practice, right? So, but we'll start right, just with the grounding work. Then we get into our gratitude. We do some chanting, right? So I invite you to just allow your attention to settle low into the body. And this is what I mean, beginning to acknowledge the seat under you, and the weight of the body making contact with the seat. Right? So the sensation of the body being held by the seat, your body being held by the seat, or whatever you're sitting on or lying on. If I wasn't teaching, I would be lying and, and reclining. But so this sensation, this grounding sensation, it's really meant to take care of us. Right? It's meant to kind of anchor our attention. So bringing your attention out of like just everything that's swirling now, right? And bringing it and letting it rest just within this weight of the body and the contact of the seat. And just allow your attention to actually kind of flow down even lower and beginning to touch into the earth, the land under you, right? And so the energy of our attention begins to touch into the energy of the earth. You don't have to feel anything in particular, just saying, my attention is being held by the earth, or it's being supported by the earth, or it's touching the earth, something like that. And that's a link, right? That we begin to reestablish with the earth, that I am always being held by the earth. And slowly letting the earth, the reality of the earth, just emerge, expand. Right? And what is the energy of the earth that you're connecting to? Right? And just for a moment, I wonder if you can just reflect on all the ways that the earth, the land has taken care of you, just today, maybe. How has the earth held you, cared for you, and so forth? Sometimes in my practice, I begin to imagine that the earth is just my beloved, right? Whatever that means for you, like that's like the earth is like the being that's really caring for me, always caring for me, always holding me, protecting me, providing for me, and that I'm never alone, right? While the earth is still under me, supporting me. So returning, or rather shifting our reflection into gratitude, beginning to awaken the energy of gratitude, and allowing ourselves to reflect on all the ways in which we're being cared for and tended to, you know, all the labor and the kindness that's directed towards us, for us, right? From beings that we know, from the majority of beings that we don't know. Allowing that gratitude for being taken care of to begin to awaken. And you can even think of specific things, right, that you can experience gratitude from. Allowing that energy of gratitude to really begin to fill everything, your mind, your body, right? And I wonder if you can allow yourself to be cared for by this gratitude as well. And when you're ready, beginning to share some of this gratitude down into the earth. Just letting it like sink out of the body and just into the earth, imagining that the earth is being to be filled with this energy of gratitude. And I want you to let go of limitations and fear around gratitude and the earth, just to begin to relate to gratitude as being boundless, without limits, right? Like, I want you to be so saturated with gratitude that this energy is just like dripping off of you. It's like condensation. Like, you're so filled with gratitude that it's like condensation that begins to like drip down, right, from your body. To be that filled and not thinking about anything else but just being filled, being drenched in this energy of gratitude so much that you can just share it with the earth, and that the earth will be filled with it because it is boundless. Let the gratitude take care of your heart. Let it take care of pain. And so we're going to move actually right into our main mantra for Medicine Buddha's mantra. But just in our mantra practice for this session, I want us to imagine in our practice that this energy of gratitude, that the energy of gratitude that you're cultivating, awakening, and experiencing, I want you to imagine that you begin to channel this energy into something, to an experience maybe that you've had in this session that needs some care, some support. Because we're understanding that we're not, the energy of gratitude isn't about being grateful for something. The energy of gratitude is this energy, this fundamental energy of healing, expansion, openness, right? And we can channel the essence of this energy into any situation that needs support. And it doesn't matter if this is just happening now. I did just say if something just came up. But if you feel called to do, you can offer this energy into a situation from the past that could use some support, right? So just working with the past and just working with something present has come up. But present situations are rooted in the past. So, but directing that energy of gratitude, imagining that the core discomfort or hurt or woundedness is being deeply saturated by this energy. And of course, you can imagine doing this in a variety of ways. You can imagine like sending light, this gratitude in the form of light into the situation, or anything that feels creative and appropriate for you. But just channeling this energy into what still feels wounded and raw and hurt, and letting that situation, that experience be cared for. Okay. And then as I won't verbally offer the prayer request. So the prayer request also something that we begin to send energy into. I've been kind of reading them as they've been posted. So I'll be offering prayers and energy into these situations as well that have been offered. Okay. So we begin. O te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soa. Te taum begenze, begenze, ma begenze, rasa umbegenze begenze ma begenze lasu sumangane zoa teata umbegenze begenze ma begenze lasu sumangane soa 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 Teata um begenze ma begenze rasumagadesoa. Teata 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 begenze ma begenze rasumagadesoa. So just a few moments, I invite you to transition from sending this energy of gratitude out into situations and down into the earth and so forth. And I invite you to shift that energy back around. I want you to imagine that the gratitude that you've been radiating out into the space around you and down to the earth begins to radiate back to you. So you're not depleting the healing of what you've been offering to, but instead these situations, including the earth, have been filled so much with your gratitude that it begins to naturally radiate back to you without depleting itself. So you begin to reabsorb this vicarious gratitude back into your own experience. So the world and past situations begin to offer back to you what you have offered to them or to it. And just what does it feel like just to sit and to receive gratitude from things around you? You're receiving this not because you're special, not because you deserve it, but because this is what you are. You are an expression of gratitude. So you're just connecting to your essential nature in a way. By allowing yourself to reabsorb this gratitude, you're just recognizing who and what you are. And when you're ready, just returning your attention back to the seat. Again, noticing the weight of your body making contact with the seat. Allowing that sensation of grounding to really pull your attention back out of everything that you've been doing, back into the moment, back into the weightiness, the groundedness. And as we transition out of the practice, I encourage you to just make one last aspiration in your personal practice. And I want you to aspire or pray or affirm, whatever makes sense to you. I want you just to say something like, may this energy of gratitude continue to support me and all of those who rely on me. May this energy of gratitude continue to support me and all those who rely on me. When you're ready, just coming out of the practice, we're going to go into Shantideva's prayer from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. Again, we'll recite this 3 times together. Okay? And again. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, and a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. Okay, thank you everyone for your practice today, tonight, wherever we are in the world. Um, and just continue to check out our schedules for Buddhist Basha, my personal schedule as well. Please join us Wednesday nights as we continue as Brenda and Karen continue to lead us in our Wednesday night discussions, and join us Friday for Lama Justin's session on Mahamudra as well. And I think that's it. Check my schedule for things that are coming up as well. I think that is it for all of us. And so we'll see you back here next Wednesday. And as always, the recordings are here, so you can go back for 48 weeks. Almost, yeah, we're coming up to a year of being on Crowdcasts. So we have almost a year of teachings you can go back and listen to. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I hope to see you again hopefully one day in person. I get to see you, hopefully. All right. Thank you, everyone. Please be well.